Welcome all. We're going to be discussing the Zoom host role here today, and we have some folks here in our audience, but there's people that are out here that are viewing this after the fact, and hopefully the people who are here today may ask some questions that you may also have in the back of your mind. If not, jot your questions down. Hopefully, as we go through the presentation itself, they will, become more obvious. It will cover those materials for you. And if we don't, you can always send me an email and I would be happy to answer those questions for you. And so I'm bringing this presentation up. Now, what I will say is this: I put this presentation together about a month ago so that I could provide training to other people who were wanting to know how to handle the Zoom host role. So some of the information here is already passed, and so I'll point those items out, particularly like on the training dates and whatnot. So bear with the fact that some of this information may be a little bit dated. I'm going to go over several items here. First of all, I'm going to go over some general information that you as a Zoom host should know and have in the back of your mind. What specifically your role as a it says Toastmaster role, but it says Zoom host here, but it's actually your Zoom host role, and the upcoming training events, and some of those are a little bit dated. Speech requirements. Now, this is for contestants themselves. And why is this important? You, as a Zoom host, may be called upon to check on this information as well, but it's primarily the responsibility for the chief judge and the Toastmaster themselves. So there are going to be two contests. There's the International Speech and the Humorous Speech Contest. The Humorous Speech Contest will go first. There is an actual script to be followed, and I will be providing that script out to all of the um, Zoom hosts and to the Toastmasters themselves so that they have that available, because there's cues that are in there that you're going to be watching out for. Humorous speech is open to all members that are in good standing. Someone who's in good standing is a member who's been paid up for the current 6-month period and that their club has at least 8 current paid up members. If they have less than that, then they get, unfortunately, disqualified. That's not my rule. That's Toastmaster and national rules. The international speech has an additional requirement, and they have to either be a DTM under the prior program or have at least 2 levels completed in any one path. And by that, I don't mean having 1 level in one path and 1 level in another path. Doesn't work. You got to have at least 2 levels in any path. Obviously, if you have more, that's fine. Now, for a new club, one that's been chartered recently, they will waive that requirement because they feel, they being Toastmaster International, feels that they would not have had enough time to actually complete those 2 paths or two levels. People who cannot participate as a contestants are current deck members. So any area directors, division directors, and above cannot be a contestant in a contest. Certain other officers, such as the PRM, that's the public relations manager, the finance manager, admin manager, parliamentarian, can't be included in a contestant role. If you're a regional or above, that also makes sense. You can't do that. If you're planning to run for elective office, either in D30 or at a regional level, you cannot be a contestant. And also, if you are a past international winner of the International Speech Contest, in other words, you were a world champion of public speaking, you are forever prevented from competing in another international speech contest again, because they say, hey, you've already won it. You've already proven yourself. There's no sense in you competing against other people. They're not going to have a chance. So it's a one and done deal. Once you win it, you're there. You've already made it. Now, a member can compete in more than one club, but if they win in more than one club, then they have to pick which area they want to compete in, because we don't want to have a situation where you're in this area and that area and you're kind of working up and now you're at the same division level. It causes problems. So they say you're not allowed to compete in more than one area contest. These are the dates. The club contests are going to be finished up by the end of February. It's actually, this has been updated. It's now we have 88 clubs. I think actually we even have 90 now, more recently. Area contests are going to be held in March, and there's 21 areas. Division contests are going to be in the first 21 days of April, and there's 6 of those. And then the district contest, and this has actually been changed, it'll be the 3rd and 4th instead of the 4th and 5th. Put this down. Okay, up, it says contest Toastmaster. Let me go back down here. No, this is a Zoom. Okay, it should also, it's also the same for the Zoom host. They got to be in good standing. Again, you got to meet the requirements as we defined before. And you can't be in the same club as any contestant in the contest where you are the Zoom host or co-host. And that makes sense too, because even though you as the Zoom host are not directly impacting it, it could be viewed or perceived that you might have an unfair bias towards someone who is in your own club. So therefore, to avoid any appearance that there might be a bias, there's this rule that's implemented by Toastmasters International that says you cannot be in the same club as a contestant in that contest. You have to come early. This looks like it's been a mix-up between Toastmaster and Zoom host, but the Zoom host has to actually come in and open up the room, okay? And then you assign co-host rights to other people, including the Toastmaster and the chief judge. You're going to conduct the contestant final. Oh, that's again a Toastmaster. See, this was copied over from the other one. And they're going to read the script, That's the Toastmaster role. So ignore those. Sorry. Zoom features demo. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. Now, the first point is you need to be able to handle the various functions of the contest. The first issue is you need to be able to open up breakout rooms. Are you familiar with how to open a breakout room? And so I'm going to open it up to Delia and Chaitanya here to say, are you guys familiar with that function, the breakout room function? And I'm going to share.
Yeah, I am familiar.
You are familiar with that, okay. Delia?
I am more familiar with Teams than I am with Zoom.
Okay. So now the somewhat unfortunate thing is that you're not able to see when I actually open up the breakout rooms and stuff. It doesn't show on screen. So that's a little bit tough, but you will be able to see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make you guys co-host. And to make a co-host, and again, you can't see this when I do this, click over on the side here. What I do is you go over and you open up the participant screen. That's on the bottom. If you look on your toolbar on the bottom, you'll have mute, stop video, blah, 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 blah. Like the fourth one over says participants. You click open on that. And then if you go over, you'll see the list of the 4 names of the people who are here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to where it's called the ellipses. You hover over it and you'll see 3 dots. That's called an ellipses. You click on that and that gives you more options. And you go down to the drop-down box and there's an option that says make co-host. So I'm going to click on that and it asks me here, do you want to make Chaitanya Kovri co-host of this meeting? And I say yes. And then you'll receive a message that says you've just been made a co-host. And the same thing I'm going to do for Delia here. I'm going to make you co-host and say yes. So now you should be able to see some of the functions that I'm doing as I'm creating these breakout rooms. Or at least you'll see the aftermath of that. Now, unfortunately for the folks who are online, you aren't going to be able to see that because these are functions that happen behind the scenes and they're not appearing on the screen. I guess they do that so that you can do this without being disruptive to the meeting itself. So you'll just have to listen to my descriptions of those items. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and open a breakout room. Now I look across the bottom and I don't see breakout rooms immediately shown because I've got the recording turned on. But if you go back all the way to the end, it says more. Again, it's the 3 dots, the ellipses. You're going to click on there, and the second option is actually breakout rooms. And it says create a breakout room. Now, I'm going to, and there's 3 options. You can look at that yourself too. You can click on that. Just don't make one of those while I'm making it. There's 3 options. It says assign automatically, assign manually, and then let the participants choose room. Now, there are certain functions where you can choose that 3rd option, such as when we do like officer training. That's not going to be the case for a contest. On a contest, we want to choose the 2nd option, which is to assign manually. And I'm going to create 2, so it's up top, it says create rooms. I'm going to create 2 rooms. And the first room I'm going to rename, and I'm going to call it functionaries. I'm going to type that in, functionaries, yes. And then the 2nd room I'm going to rename, and when you highlight over it, it shows you the rename option. And there I'm going to say contestants. Contestants. Okay. Except I didn't spell that correctly. Let's fix that. Very good. Yes. And then I'm going to open the rooms. Boom. Now, if you look, you should probably see something that popped up now. It shows breakout rooms in progress. And can you guys tell me if you do see that? You might as well leave your chat on open because I'm going to have some questions back and forth. So Delia joined one and Chaitanya joined the other. Okay. Now they're both in the contestants room. Okay. I'm going to broadcast a message to them. I'm going to say, come on back. Okay.
Yeah, so we were successfully able to go and come.
Yes. Now normally, yeah, normally when you're setting these up, you don't join them, but you saw where there was a functionaries room and a contestants room. And
yes,
let me go open this up. Contestants room. Okay, so you're joined. And why do I not see? I guess because you're both there, but it doesn't show you in the unassigned section because I guess you both assigned yourself to those. Okay. So in the very beginning of the session, when you first get in, you're going to set up these 2 breakout rooms, one for the contestants and one for the functionaries. The contestants, that's obvious. Those are the people who are going to be competing in the contest. And you will have the name of those contestants. Usually the Toastmaster will have spoken with you or sent you an email saying, here are my contestants. And so you'll have a list of those. And when those people come in, approximately half hour beforehand, you're going to send them right away to that room. You're going to send them to the contestants room because you don't want them looking around to see who's all around for judges and that. Once all your contestants are in that room, along with the Toastmaster, you're going to start assigning the functionary. And those are going to be the chief judge, all the judges, the timers, and the ballot counters. Okay, so you got 4 different groups of people there. Typically, the timers and the ballot counters will have put something in front of their name. Chief judge will put something in front of their name. Judges are not going to put something in front of their name because you're not supposed, the other people aren't supposed to know who the judges are. And you're not going to put anything in front of their name because you don't want other people knowing who the judges are. You as a Zoom host will know who the judges are because essentially you have to, because you need to put them in the room. So therefore, by default, you're going to know who they are. So, but you're going to keep that information to yourself. Typically, the chief judge will have sent you an email prior to the contest saying, here are my judges, here are my ballot counters, here are my timers. So you will have a list of people that are supposed to go into the functionary room roughly a half hour or so before the actual contest starts. Usually it's like 25 minutes before. Why? Because you want the contestants to go in their room first. If a contestant comes in late, as soon as they come in, you want to whisk them away and put them in the contestant room right away, so they're not looking around to see who the judges are, okay? Because they're not supposed to know who the judges are, because you don't want them communicating with the judges at all and trying to appeal to them or whatever. So they're going to be in there. The contestants are going to talk with their Toastmaster. They're going to determine what the speaking order is going to be. They will give that to the Toastmaster. Well, the Toastmaster will have it available, and they will mention it in live when they get to that portion of the script. In addition, they're going to go through and they're going to have them do a last-minute sound check, make sure they can be heard, that their lighting is okay, that's not a dark background, blah, 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 all that good stuff. So that's what they're going to do. In the meantime, in the functionary room, the timers and the ballot counters are going to go first. They're going to receive last-minute instructions from the chief judge. The judges are going to be instructed on last-minute items, particularly where to send their ballots to. They're supposed to send them to the chief judge and to the ballot counters themselves. And usually that's going to be an email that are going to have chief judge and the 2 ballot counters specifically mentioned on there. The ballot counters are going to jot down the names of all the judges at that time, and they'll have it and they'll put them in on their tally sheet so they can have that available when they start to do that. Now, why is that important? We're going to get to that in just a second. They're all going to come back from their individual pre-briefing rooms, and then at that point, the chief judge will notify you that they are ready to start. Okay, if they have not told you they're ready to start and they're already back, you will ask the chief judge. They should know, but just in case they get caught up in the moment, you could say, Mr. Chief Judge or Madam Chief Judge, are you ready to start the contest? Normally you would ask this question when it gets time to actually start. Let's say you have a 6:30 start time in the evening, and it's 6:29, and everybody's back. You're going to say, Chief Judge, are you ready to start the contest? And they'll say yes, or they say no because they're still waiting for one person or whatever. When they're all ready, then you're going to kick it over to the Toastmaster. Usually the Toastmaster will actually ask that question, and you don't have to, but if they're milling about, talking about other things, just networking, you want to kind of move them along so that they're not letting the start time drift on when everybody's sitting around ready to go. If they're not, you'll know they're not ready because people are saying they're waiting for someone to come back, or they haven't all come back out of the room yet. And you'll see that because you'll be able to see who's in the room and who's not in the room. Okay. So now the Toastmaster is going to go through and you're going to close these rooms out. Okay. Later on, you're going to set up another room. I'm going to get to that just right now. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and then we'll come back. Later on, when the first contest is done and they had the last contestant speak, usually just before the last contestant is done speaking, you're going to set up another room. And this room is going to be called, you can call it the chief judge room, okay, or you can call it the ballot room, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. But usually it's one of those two. Because when the chief judge says, we have collected all the ballots, they'll usually tell that to the Toastmaster. They'll say, Madam Toastmaster, we have collected all the ballots. Once they do that, they're going to be asking you to open the room where the chief judge and the ballot counters will go, and they're going to discuss the results. They're going to have it tabulated, and they're going to go and talk about it, make sure they're all on the same page, and then they're going to send the results off to the sponsor of the contest. We'll come back to that in just a moment. But I just wanted to address this because this is another room that you set up. Boom. Now, that's the first contest, which is humorous speech. Then there's going to be some discussion, you know, the discussion from the trio will be myself, Stella. We'll go through and we'll make some notes. You know, we'll say, here are the upcoming events, blah, blah, blah. Here are the contests going on. Here's the conference in May that's going to be going on, et cetera, et cetera. And then there might be like a short break, like 5 minutes or so. At that point, you and the sponsor can decide whether or not you want to have music during that break time. You want to have a timer during that break time. Usually that break is going to be 5 minutes. If you're really moving fast, you can maybe have it 10 minutes. But if you go much longer than that, then people are going to drift away. But you're going to just want to give a little bit of time so people can go get a drink of water, some soda, use the restroom, whatever. And then they're going to start the next contest, which is the International Speech Contest. Again, you go through the whole same thing. At the end of that, you will again open up another breakout room for the chief judge, either call it chief judge or bell count or whatever. And they're going to do the same thing where they're going to go in and tabulate the results. And when they're done, they'll come back and they'll let people know that they're ready to go. So that's what you need to do in terms of breakout rooms. Okay, so let's wind it back a little bit. Okay. So you're going through and you're going through each of the contestants. They're going through, and there's a minute of silence in between. Now, you're going to read something when the contest, or actually the Toastmaster is going to read something in there in the very beginning, telling people about the protocols of, you know, courtesy. And they're going to say is everybody should turn off their cameras so that, like right now, you Chaitanya and Delia, you got your cameras turned off. They're going to ask everybody to turn off their cameras. They're going to tell everybody to put themselves on mute so that the only people who are visible are going to be the contestant, the Toastmaster, and the timer, the main timer. Okay. What's this? I will be such in this. Okay, got it. You may have to, you and or your co-host, Zoom co-host, may have to go and shut people off if they don't abide by that, particularly if you've got somebody that's on a telephone, because they don't have the same functionality as people who are on a computer have. So you may have to go off to the right-hand side again to that participant. And what will happen is you will go and you go do the right click, and then you're going to go and you're going to tell them, you can either click on to mute, or you can tell them to actually, turn off the video. In the event that there's multiple people of it, you can go to the bottom of that screen and it says mute all, and that'll cut everybody off. The problem muting all people is that it also mutes the contestant and the Toastmaster. So then you have to turn them back on. So that's why the preferred way to do it is just to have everybody turn their own thing off. Also, that will allow people to turn on as needed, like the contestants to turn themselves on as they come back in, and each of them are going to do that. Now, when you go in and the first contestant comes in there, what you want to do is you want to spotlight them. Now, let's say I want to go and I want to spotlight Bobby. I will go over and hover over his picture, and there's two things that pop up. One says ask to unmute, and the second one says it's the ellipses, and you go through and you go down about 5 options. It says spotlight for everyone. And so I'm going to go and I'm going to turn him on. And so there you are, Bobby. Ooh, we're spotlighting you. You're on picture now. And so he's the person who's going to be spotlighted. You will leave him on while he's doing his talk. Now, here's the key. Typically, the Toastmaster will talk first, and because he's the one that's speaking, he will pop to the front initially. And he's going to be talking to the contestant, blah, 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 blah. And he's going to say, do you see the timer? Yes. Can you pin the timer? And they will give instructions on how to pin the timer, et cetera, while they're in their briefing. They will pin the timer. After the timer has been pinned, you have to do it after, you then spotlight the contestant. If you spotlight the contestant before they pin the timer, chances are they're not going to be able to pin the timer. So you want to make sure you do it after they've pinned it. And what that does is it will move the timer to the front of the deck. It'll appear right after their own picture. So that way they can see the blue for right, mean neutral, green at 5 minutes, 6 minutes is yellow, 7 is red. So that's when they know on the timing on how far along they are in their speech, and they can see that and judge accordingly. When the contestant is done, this is important. As soon as they're done, they say, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. You want to go over to the left-hand side, and right now you probably see remove spotlight in the upper left-hand corner of Bobby's picture. You want to go over to where it says remove spotlight and click on that. Okay. And you can then go and you can also click on, let's say, the Toastmaster, and you can go and let's see if I can, yes, I can spotlight for everyone. And now my picture shows up. But you want to go and move it over to the Toastmaster because they're the ones who are speaking. The reason for that is there's a moment of silence, 1 minute of silence in between each speaker. You don't want the speaker who's just finished up to continue to be highlighted at that point in time, because in a lot of cases, they'll finish their speech and they're going to be like, huh, okay? And so you don't want to have that reaction on screen at the time. Or they're going to be a little nervous because they thought they might have forgotten something, or they're going to be like really jubilant. Yeah, I really got this. You don't want those emotions to sway the judges. So in order to be fair to all contestants, you want, as soon as they're done, you want to get them removed from spotlight and then go and click on somebody else. Usually it's the Toastmaster. Okay. You continue doing that through all contestants. And when you're done, you will go through and at the very end, they're going to say all contestants have finished. Judges, you now have all the time that you need, et cetera, et cetera. At that point, again, make sure that you spotlight the Toastmaster instead of the last contestant. And the Toastmaster is going to feel a little uncomfortable because they're going to be on spotlight for maybe 4 or 5 minutes until the chief judge says, Mr. Toastmaster, we have collected all ballots. And that's when you are going to, as I mentioned before, you're going to move those people over, manually move them over into that other room. At that point, the Toastmaster is going to invite up the trio. And as soon as the trio comes up, you know, they say they're available, you're going to want to probably, and generally speaking, the order is the district director goes first. And then it would be PQD, which would be myself. And then the CGD, which would be Vasu. Okay, so it will be in that order, typically. Now, if one of us is not available, then the other two will do it, or the other one, whoever's just available, will speak, and it'll be generally in that order. And what you do is you can go and just highlight each one directly, or what you can do, and I'm going to do this right now, is you can do what they call a split screen. So I'm going to go first and say, I guess I can't, I'm trying to go to Bobby and to make him visible, but I guess because he has his screen turned off, I got to remove, let's try removing my spotlight. Oh, he's turned it back on. Thank you. So I'm going to spotlight Bobby first. Okay. And then I'm going to go over to the Chaitanya here, and because he's not there right now, I can't do that.
You mean like
Yep.
as in on the
Yep.
camera?
Yep. Turn your camera on for a second.
On? Okay, 1 second. Mm. Just going down. Okay.
There you are. Okay, so now I'm going to go, and there's an option, and you can highlight over these as well. I'm going to add spotlight. It's the 5th option down. Okay, and so now what you see is I see a side by side. This is important because when you get to the second set where you're doing the interviews, you're going to want to have the Toastmaster in the one square here. He's going to be asking the questions, and you're going to want to have the contestants in the second box, and you can go through and you can get the back and forth then, and it's actually a little better presentation. So what you're doing is you're adding the spotlight. Now, if you go back later on, you can go click again in the ellipses, and you can say remove spotlight, and let's say that you are now the second contestant. So then I would go through, I would leave the Toastmaster on, and I would drop the first contestant, and then I'm going to go and say add spotlight. And now I'm imagining that you're the second contestant, and now you're in place, and now Toastmaster is going to ask the second contestant the questions. So that's how you do that. So you leave the one on, and you just keep adding and then dropping the additional person off of that. Okay. If you wish, if you have all 3 trio members, and I'm gonna stop sharing there for a second. Remove spotlight. Okay, we've got Bobby back just by himself. What you can do is you can actually do 3. You don't have to do just 2. You could just keep adding additional spotlights. I don't know what the limit is, but I've seen 4 done often as well. So you could add all 3 of the trio members in and have them be available, and each one of them can speak. And then if you wish, you could take whoever's done speaking, you could take them, remove the spotlight, so it's just the remaining 2, but that's your call.
Mhm.
But you can add people to it. So that's the functionality that I wanted to cover today, is as a Zoom host, you should add people to the spotlight as well. So I'm going to remove spotlight from Bobby here. So he's no longer spotlighted. Now you're just naturally there because you were the last person that I had on. After you do the interviews, then you're going to you'll hear the Toastmaster say, okay, that wraps up my portion of the contest. I'm turning it over to the contest sponsor, and usually that's going to be the area director for an area contest, or in the case of a division contest, it would be the division director. In this case, if it was Bobby's division, he would be the person that would be turned over to. And so the contest sponsor is the person who's going to typically list what the results are. Now, in an in-person situation, it'll be a little bit different, particularly at the conference, the annual conference that we're going to have. What'll happen is we'll get the trio members up, and we'll announce first, second, third, and we'll give the actual trophies out manually, and we'll hand those off to the people. Stella would give out the first place, I would give out second place, and Vasu would give out the third place trophy. So that's how that typically goes. And of course, we shake the hands, et cetera, et cetera. But that's because we're there in person. In a Zoom environment, what you're going to do is typically the sponsor of the contest, either area director or division director, are going to read the results, and they are going to read them in backwards order. Now, you will have given co-host capability to the club sponsor by this time, so that they can go and they can bring up their PowerPoint presentation, because they're going to have a PowerPoint presentation where they're going to show the third place certificate, then the second place certificate, and then finally the first place certificate. Okay. Questions. That's essentially the chain of events that occurs during that time.
No questions, Jim. It seems like a lot, but I'm guessing
There's a
that
lot of pieces, but it's not hard. You just have to remember all that. Now we're going to give you a list of, like the order of events that occurs as a Zoom host. So you'll have that available, and you're going to be communicating back and forth with the chief judge and with the Toastmaster, primarily Toastmaster, and they will guide you, and they may direct you. The Toastmaster will say, "Can you spotlight this contestant?" Now you'll already know this in advance, but just in case, if they're moving along a little faster than you've done it, they'll ask you to do it. So don't feel offended. They're just wanting to make sure that the proper protocol is being followed.
Yeah, we're all part of the same family, so
Yes,
we're all helping each other to get a good experience.
exactly.
right?
We're trying to make sure that the contest is moving along smoothly. And let me see what I have over here. So that was the demo. So we have over here the features. Training events, obviously, these have already passed. I will mention that Marty Jalove is going to actually have a session over on the 28th, which is this upcoming Wednesday. It's part of the makeup session for number 3. We also have another speaker, Mike Pope, who's going to be giving a session on Canva and how that can help you with your PowerPoint presentation. Geek Squad, we moved that because we had light attendance, and we couldn't get all the folks lined up anyway that we wanted to do this. We moved this over to, I think it's the 9th of March. That's still tentative, but I think that's what we're moving it to.
Jim,
The Geek Squad training is how to set up all your equipment if you're doing a hybrid environment. Go ahead.
Jim, the judges, right? So Bobby is the chief judge, but the rest of the judges and ballot counters and timers, who is assigning them? Are you assigning them?
No, the chief judge goes out and arranges for the judges, the ballot counters, and the timers. That said, that's still a lot of people that need to be collected for that. That's why we like to set up these contests before we reserve a time slot. We want to have about 2 weeks or more is even better, so that they have a time to do that. If it's less than 2 weeks, then what happens is the contest sponsor is going to have to help the chief judge get those folks, because there won't be enough time to get them. And by the way, the Zoom host probably will be asked to attend the briefings that are going to occur. The briefings actually occur one each by the contest Toastmaster and also the chief judge. Are separate meetings, okay? Because again, you don't want the contestants to know who the judges are. But those are typically 1 to 2 days prior to the actual contest. And the contestants briefing is going to be primarily talking about the rules, telling them about how they could get disqualified if they do certain things, time, or what they could do, what they call a callback situation. And we cover that in more detail in the chief judge's training, and or content, if their content is less than 25. If they have more than 25% non-original content, they would get disqualified. So that's how that works. Callback is where you are actually referring to another contestant's speech and using some of their material, and or specifically calling their name out, because you're like piggybacking off of what they said. So that Toastmasters International views that as being unfair. The idea of the random draw for the order of when the speeches are given is that it should theoretically not matter whether you're first or last. And if you're doing a callback, you have the quote unquote unfair advantage of being able to call out parts of other people's speeches to enhance your own, whereas the people in the beginning would not have had that opportunity. So that becomes a disqualification, just so that you're aware of that. So Chief Judge has the rules on how that gets covered, but just so that you're aware of that as well. As a Zoom host. You may have a situation where the chief judge will say, Zoom host, can you send the judges to the ballot room? In which case you may have to send the judges all over to there. And the reason for that is that they're probably going to have to talk about a disqualification, and they're going to have all the judges essentially vote on whether or not they view that as the disqualification rises to the level where the contestant actually is eliminated from the competition or not.
Go ahead.
So especially if it's gray, if it's very clear that they've done something, they may not ask to do that. They'll just say, we had a disqualification due to callback, and they won't mention the name. Same thing if there's a disqualification for time, they won't mention the name. They'll just say, we had disqualification for time, and they'll just leave it at that. Although, depending on the number of people, it may be obvious. If you only got 3 contestants and you're only awarding 2 places, it's pretty obvious who got disqualified for time. Same thing if you got 4 contestants and the 3 are named first, second, third, then you know who the 4th place person was, is that they get disqualified for time. But if there's 5 or more, then there's some mystery to who got disqualified. So that's part of that issue there. Let me see what else.
I think for Bobby, for Delia's area contest, maybe you can reach out to Marian. She would be a good judge if she's available. If you're trying to get judges.
Yeah, can you put that on the Slack on our channel?
Okay, sure.
Yep. So, yep. You
Thank you.
don't want to talk too much about judges in open forum. Okay. So yes, I would say send it as a separate note. You only mentioned the first name, so we don't know who the last name is, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
But typically you don't want to put the identity of judges out there.
Yeah. Good idea.
So that was the Toastmaster. The chief judge is going to have their own briefing, and they're going to go over the rules for the judges so that they understand what they are, what to look for in terms of disqualifications, etc. They're going to describe the timers, what their roles are, how they're supposed to do their jobs. Same thing with the ballot counters. So they may ask you as a Zoom host to attend one or both briefings. It depends on how comfortable the chief judge and the Toastmaster are in their functions. They may just explain what needs to be done, and they won't necessarily have to have you there, but they may ask. So just be aware that you may have to attend a briefing. Usually the briefing is going to be half hour, an hour at most. Okay. And it will be 1, 2, maybe 3 days prior to. And then again, there's going to be a pre-briefing right before the contest, but that's to handle last minute stuff. All the other, meatier material should have been covered during the actual briefings beforehand.